As scientific discovery changes the landscape, advances in cancer care may offer new hope for your patients. See how Pfizer is helping reshape what's possible at cancer.pfizer.com.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This is going to be an hour-long video about Bigfoot. Okay, so buckle up, get comfortable, get ready. Now, if you want to listen to this without watching it, go to Spotify or Apple Podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. The link is in the comments. So let's get right into Bigfoot, okay? The biggest question I always get is, why haven't we found him? I think we have many times over. I think so many people have seen the truth, have provided the facts about Bigfoot, and science and the government will want to hide it. The reason why is I think it would cause a lot of conflict with religion and cultural beliefs. So a lot of people already have a hard time accepting that 21 other human species have walked this earth. I grew up in church, okay, guys? I also have an open mind. And I think the Bible is very vague on a lot of stuff. And a lot of people have a hard time getting past what I'm about to say. Because in the Bible it says that God created us. He is not specific when he says us. So there's been 21 humanoid species. That's an irrefutable fact of science that they have discovered, that they have claimed to discover. I honestly think there's more.
It's 1938. The 2-week pay period is invented. But then the world got faster. Faster travel, faster delivery, faster everything. Except our pay. Until now, with daily pay, everyone can access money they've earned when they need it. Yes, this is the future of pay. Daily pay. Work with the leader in on-demand pay at dailypay.com. Transfer fee may apply.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Around 6 of them, and up to 9 of them, existed at the same time Neanderthals did. In fact, what we are today is a mix of Homo sapien and Neanderthal. There is not a single person on this planet that does not have at least a tiny bit of Neanderthal DNA in them. Science has yet to find anybody with less than 0.2% Neanderthal DNA. Some people have a whopping 20% Neanderthal in their DNA still today. And Neanderthals haven't existed for a long time. And we still have people walking around that are 20% Neanderthal. That means that their great-grandparents were damn near straight up Neanderthal. It's not that far back in our future when you think about it. So I think that they don't want to say, like, hey, there is still at least one humanoid creature walking around on this earth. And that's what I have a hard time accepting from people, is they say, oh, Bigfoot can't be real. Why not? We had all these other humanoid species out there. What if this is just another one? Now, if you don't like my theory on Bigfoot, guys, this video is going to cover like 7 different theories on Bigfoot. And I'm not going to tell you which one that I believe in. But these are all going to cover the different aspects of it, all the way from feral people, all the way to Native American beliefs, it being a spiritual creature, not a real physical creature. Maybe that's why we don't find bodies. I'm going to cover all of the aspects of it, all the way down to it just being a big old great ape, which is not a monkey. Apes and monkeys are not the same. So, after knowing that we have all these different humanoid species that have existed on this earth, some were as short as about 3.5 to 4 foot tall. So, like literally the hobbits from Middle Earth. Some were the size that we are now. We're actually about the biggest species that ever existed. Now, Neanderthals had much thicker bones than us. They were a lot stronger than us, pound for pound. We were a lot smarter. That's the reason why we're believed to be the only one left now, is because we kind of phased everything else out because we were just smarter than everybody. And we could use tools better than everybody else can. But we were not the only humanoid species to be able to speak or to use tools. So I just want to get that out of the way now. A lot of people say that, oh, the other humanoid species don't count because they're really closer to apes. Nope, they could use tools. They could talk. In fact, some inventions that we have today, such as the wheel, they think the Neanderthals were the ones that actually came up with it. So go ahead and get that out of your head. So now, talking about people and humanoid species, my first theory we're going to cover is that Bigfoot is actually just a feral human. Now, there is a ton of different accounts you can look up of like retired park rangers, current park rangers that want to stay anonymous because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. People that have, been avid hikers on the, the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains that say that Bigfoot is not a ape creature, that he is a feral human. And the reason why he is so hairy is because he is just that, he's feral. A lot of people say, well, you couldn't, evolve and change this quickly. Yeah, you can. Like there has been so many subcultures of people that we have found in this world that have had crazy abnormalities that look wildly different than the rest of humankind. Like look at the Kentucky Blue people, where it was essentially like a 1 in a million chance, or 1 in 10 million chance, that two people that carry the same rare blood disorder that turns your skin a slight shade of blue would meet up and marry each other. And then so their kids were literally blue like Smurfs. Then their children kept being blue because then they started, there's a lot of inbred and all that stuff going on there. That's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. But that's just to prove that in recent history, like some of them are still alive, that we have seen subcultures of humans that can look wildly different than the rest of us. Just because of genetic freak accidents or going feral. Going feral is a real thing. If you take a domestic hog, you take your pink little cute cartoon pigs and you release them into the wild, within literally just a few months, they can undergo a transformation where you would not recognize that pig anymore and they would be what you would know as a wild hog. They're way more aggressive. They have way more hair. Their hair is way longer. Their tusks get bigger. Their snouts actually change disposition. Like their bone structure changes. Their bone structure changes. Now, why does this happen? A lot of it is to believe that it is their diet. It's not because there's not somebody petting them and feeding them and being all nice to them every day. It's because their diet changes to have a lot more creatine and a lot more protein. On farms, they tend to get almost nothing but grains and like fruits and vegetables and table scraps, where in the wild, they're eating a lot of raw insects. They're eating a lot of small rodents. They're eating anything they can get their hands on. And this increase in protein and creatine will change them drastically. So now when we cook our foods, we cook a lot of that creatine and taurine out of the foods. If you have not looked at like the whole predator theory on why like lions and bears and all these other big predator creatures can be so aggressive and they're so known to attack if you mess with them, is because of that taurine and creatine that's in their diet and it's necessary for them. So if you were to take a human and put them out in the wild and started making them only eat these kind of things, obviously their genetic disposition is going to change because they're getting foods that aren't as cooked. They're not as processed. They're a lot more raw. There's nothing wrong with that if people want to do raw diets, but when you're doing it day after day, generation after generation, it's going to have some effects. People will jump to, well, why weren't people in the Middle Ages, feral? If you ever look at people that were in the Middle Ages, they were also wildly different than us, behavior-wise, aggression-wise. People were way more violent back a long time ago. So, that's not a huge jump there. The feral people thing that park rangers have described is these people that are so disconnected from reality of, modern life that they don't have the rules, they don't have the morals that you do. To them, if they killed you in the woods, that's not religiously wrong because they don't know religion. It's not morally wrong because they don't have a code to live by. There's no law to answer to. They're doing it for survival or to, this might be gruesome, but for meat. Kind of like when you watch the movie Hills Have Eyes and stuff. Or The Descent. Those are all examples of movies with feral people. But the Bigfoot theory on the feral people is, to me, a scarier. Because these park rangers talk about, they know of, there's some park rangers in the Smoky Mountains and Rocky Mountains that know of pockets of feral people. There's technically legally nothing that you can really do. It's not illegal to go live in the national parks in a tent. There's been people that have done it for years and years and years. While some areas it might be considered illegal, as long as you're not really hurting anybody and you're just camping out there, there's been plenty of instances of people that have just gone and lived for years in the national parks by choice. So this is not, an abnormal thing to do for a lot of people. Now, the way you get foods can kind of be questionable because, you get into hunting permits and fishing permits. But feral people, once again, they don't have the same law to abide by and answer by. They're living on a whole different thing. No one's really checking your fishing permits when you're in the middle of nowhere. These park rangers have described finding cabins with personal belongings, with canned foods that have obviously been stolen from places. And they all talk about how these feral people are really good at not being seen, like scarily good at not being seen. So one park ranger's talked about how he would purposely try to find this feral camp all the time to try to catch the people because they were obviously stealing. And he knew where their area was at. And he said, every time I would go there, I tried night vision cameras, I tried thermals. It was like they could hear me miles away and they would just know that I was coming. And once you get in tune with nature like that, especially if they've been living out there for generations, I'm sure that their senses are heightened, their senses are better. We have the ability to use senses that we don't even realize that we have. There's a group of islanders off the, the specific islands out there, off the coast like Indonesia, that at will, can dilate their pupils no matter what lighting they're in. That's insane. They can damn near see in the dark perfectly fine, and they can swim underwater for nearly 20 minutes. That is superhuman. Like, nearly 20 minutes they can be underwater, and they can dilate their pupils to see better underwater. That doesn't sound real. That sounds like science fiction, but I promise you it's real. Just go ahead and look that up. If you question me on any part of this video, before you start arguing with me, go look it up and then come back. Okay? So there's all kinds of adaptations that we're not even really aware of that the human body can gain that I'm sure at one point we had. Just like we know that babies used to start walking at a much earlier age, but because over generations and generations and generations, we've babied them and carried them and, kind of ooh and all them. Where babies naturally now don't start walking until much older. But back when there was cavemen and stuff, they would estimate that the babies would have to start walking within 3 to 5 months because they literally could not be able to live otherwise because the other people couldn't have carried them around all day. So we know that our bodies are wildly different than they would be if they were truly wild. Now, this guy was talking about how he would catch glimpses of them sometimes, and their ability to scale trees was, once again, supernatural. He was like, or what we would assume would be supernatural. He would talk about how they would scale trees just like monkeys you would see on TV, how quick they were, how fast they were, how silent they were. He talked about him being followed multiple times and, kind of catching them peeking at him from behind trees. And it was one of the eeriest things he could talk about because just like a deer, they essentially made no noise. It was like they just were ghosts in the woods, which there's a book you can actually read called Ghost in the Woods that is about feral people and about people that live off the grid. Anyhow, get back on topic here. There has been multiple accounts of people that have supposedly been taken by feral people, like in the last 40, 50 years. There's a lot of cases, but we're going to talk about 3 in specific. So the Dennis Martin case, I did a whole deep dive video on the Dennis Martin case. I'm just going to briefly touch on it here. This goes into the Missing 411 documentaries. If you've not watched Missing 411 with David Pilatus, if you have not watched the Missing 411 with David Pilatus, I urge you to do so. So the Missing 411 series is about people that go missing under weird circumstances. It's not about people that go missing in the national parks. It's about people that go missing in the national parks with weird circumstances, because there's a huge difference there. We're talking about this category of disappearances fall upon people that the dogs can't find their scents. They disappear from an area that shouldn't have been where they disappeared at. They disappeared when they were with a group and they stepped away from the group for just a second. They disappeared and their footprints just vanished. Like they just got sucked into the air or went into a portal of some kind. There's the Missing 411 is the really weird ones. Okay. Sometimes in the Missing 411 cases, the people are found and they're found in ways that they shouldn't have been found in, like kids that were up a cliff that they would have had to mountain climb to get up there. Or, there was one story of a boy that was found hung up in a tree, and they didn't think a mountain lion could have done it because there wasn't any claw marks or bite marks on his body. So there's no way for a mountain lion to take somebody up a tree without doing that. Even though they do take their prey into the tree, it would have left some kind of mark on this boy, and he didn't have a mark on him. Some of these are deceased. Some of them are alive. The ones that get found alive have no recollection of what happened while they were missing. Like, to them, they were only gone for a few hours, but it had actually been days. Now, there's medical reasons for that too, is because when people go under, shock and stress, they tend to feel like time moves extraordinarily fast. But anyhow, getting back on Dennis Martin. So Dennis Martin was a 6-year-old boy in the Great Smoky Mountains. This was right on the Tennessee-North Carolina border. To this day, there's never been a trace of Dennis Martin found, and it's been nearly 60 years. His whole family was there. They were playing a game of hide-and-go-seek with all their cousins and their other family that was there. The dad was aware of how young Dennis Martin was and did not want to leave him unattended and not watch him. So the dad was actually watching him while they were playing hide-and-go-seek so he could see where he hid. Now, this was a populated campground. I don't want you guys to think they were in the middle of nowhere. There was at least 15 to 20 people in the very, near vicinity. So Dennis Martin, being 6 years old, goes and ducks behind a tree. His dad watches him duck behind the tree, and he can clearly see both sides of this tree. The other boys are playing hide-and-go-seek, and one of the boys looks behind the tree that Dennis Martin had hid behind, and he didn't say, "Oh, I found somebody." He just keeps going, and the dad was like, "That's weird. He should have found Dennis." So it had been roughly, I think they said around 6 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. The dad goes behind and peeks around the tree that Dennis Martin had been hiding behind, and his son was not there. Now, this was not a really thick area for about 100 feet in any direction, so he couldn't have just slipped into a bush that was next to the tree. They got park rangers involved immediately. It was one of the quickest acting cases, and it was a humongous search party. The reason why I'm bringing Bigfoot into this is because the only police note that they had that was a lead was some witness called in roughly 20 to 30 minutes after Dennis Martin would have been gone and vanished, about 2 miles away from where he vanished at, and they said that it looked like a big, hairy person was carrying a sack of clothes over its shoulder. The sack of clothes is believed to be Dennis Martin. The hairy thing could have been a really hairy person. It could have been a feral person. It could have been a Bigfoot. However you want to classify this, that is the legitimate only police clue that was ever included on this case. And we have nothing else. Nothing. People say that it could have been an abductor, which it could have been. People say it could have been a bear. I don't think so. There was somebody would have saw a bear come into the camp. A bear wouldn't have came that close to that many people in the middle of the daylight making that noise. So a lot of people have believed what happened is the tree that he was hiding under did have branches right up above him. A lot of people have speculated that maybe this feral person or this Bigfoot creature reached down from the tree limbs on the opposite side of the tree where the dad could not see and yanked him up into the trees and then ran off through like jumping tree to tree, and then came down later. And that would have been why the dogs couldn't have picked up his scent, because he didn't touch the ground for a while. Getting into that about being snatched up into the trees, you remember the story I just told a minute ago about the boy found up in the tree. There is another woman that disappeared without any trace of what happened to her, but she was a little bit older. She was 18, and she was hiking alone. Her name was Paula Jean Weldon. I'm reading off my notes here. Paula Jean Weldon was 18 years old, and what happened to her is you can see her footprints walking, and she was described as having a backpack and a big jug of water.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on your business purchases. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 15th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. Check out the new card design at www.delta.com/Spotify Business. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends July 15th, 2026.
And she vanished. Like, her footprints just stop. It stops right underneath the pine thicket. And a lot of people have estimated and, kind of came to the conclusion that something would have had to snatch her up into those trees. If you want to go down the portal theory, that's a different video for a different day. I've done one over it before. Portal theories is pretty neat. I'm going to just briefly talk about it. It's about how you might literally walk through a different dimension. People automatically want to discredit portals. NASA literally confirms that portals are real. They just say that they happen in outer space. The fact that they're real and we don't really know anything about them tells me all I need to know that it could possibly happen. Maybe that's why the Bermuda Triangle exists. Maybe that's why all these different things exist and people go missing in random places. Maybe that's why we have national parks where we have national parks. This is called containment theory. So containment theory is the belief that the national parks are where they are because we have known that anomalies or portals, etc., happen in those areas. And they're too big of an area to block off forever from everyone. So they limit the access to them by making it where you can't build towns or cities there, and there's just hiking trails there. And it's an accepted risk that a few people might go missing or a few people might get taken by a creature. That's called containment theory. Because when you think about it, all of North America was a national park at some time. So why did we section off certain areas? There's plenty of hills and mountain ranges that are not national parks or state parks. So why are certain ones those areas? And that's containment theory that talks about portals, that talks about deals with vampires and werewolves and that being their hunting grounds. Maybe it's a Bigfoot refugee camp. There's a lot of reasons why a lot of people think that there's national park boundaries where they are. If you want to get more spooked, go look at the no light zones where even emergency crews have to get permission to go in and try to rescue you because there's not supposed to be machinery or lights in those areas. What are they trying not to disturb so badly that even a rescue crew has to get permission to go in to save you? It's kind of weird when you think about it. Now, sorry, we're going to get back on track here on the missing people in the 411. This is the last case I'm going to talk about, then we're going to move on to a new subject, okay? And this one's the one I want to talk about because it's what could happen when you go looking for things that don't want to be found. This is the case of Teresa Ann Beer. That's B-I-E-R, if anybody wants to look that up. Teresa Ann Beer. She was 22 years old. She was actually on a Bigfoot tracking expedition with a group of people. On this expedition that was in Yosemite National Park, which is probably the most common park for people to go missing in, and they were out there for a few days, and the one of the guides that was on this expedition, left the group to go back to the ranger station to report that they could not find Teresa because they saw Teresa get taken by what they could only describe as a Bigfoot. Park rangers were quick to jump that it was a grizzly bear dragging her away, and they were very adamant. No, it was walking upright, carrying her over her shoulder, and she seemed to be unconscious. What do you do with that? Did a group of people decide to murder her and hide her, and that was their alibi? Why would a group of strangers decide to murder this lady and then say a Bigfoot did it? Maybe something wrong happened on the guide, and they were responsible for her and didn't want to be sued, so they hid her. But why would the other people on the expedition also go along with it? It doesn't make a lot of sense when you start looking at it in that aspect. They were deep, deep, deep in Yosemite National Park, and they actually could not find the exact location again when they were trying to tell the park rangers where it happened. Go down that rabbit hole if you want to. A lot of people are conflicted on if this is a true crime case or not. But witnesses said that they saw her get taken by a Bigfoot. There you go. Now, what strikes me about that is how they saw it happen. No one reports hearing her screaming or fighting or kicking. It was just like, bam, it took her. So did it knock her out? Did it break her neck immediately? I don't know. Talking about breaking its neck immediately, there is a wild report you can look at where, this is in the Great Smoky Mountains, where a family that lived in the middle of nowhere, kind of like the Kentucky Blue people we talked about, they lived way off the grid and they had nothing to do with civilization. These people didn't even have driver's license. They just drove where they wanted to, did what they wanted to, and did not believe in any kind of government, contact. So they lived out in the woods. They hunted for all their own food. And they talked about how they kind of lived alongside of a Bigfoot family. Not where they'd see them every day and talk to them or anything. It's just they would see them every few months. And it was kind of an understood thing from both parties. Hey, you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. Don't mess with my area, I won't mess with your farm. And they'd go about their ways. This sounds crazy at first. But these people, the way they talked about it just felt like they were telling the truth. Yeah, they obviously looked crazy. But the way they discussed its hunting habits, and these people had no contact with civilization, describes how scientists think that Neanderthals hunted as well. They talked about how it was so quiet. Now, remember what I said about the park ranger, saying it was like a ghost? It was so quiet that it could on foot sneak up on deer, which can see almost 360 degrees around them. It also, they described how bad of an odor it had. To me, why wouldn't the deer smell it, Or maybe, if they're living out there in the woods, the deer smell it so often that it's just another smell in the woods. Who knows? But anyhow, they said they would witness it would sneak up behind deer and stick one arm underneath its torso, and the other arm in front of its neck. And when the deer would go to run, they would grab its back legs, and then they would snap its neck backwards and kill it almost instantly. They were apparently so strong that they could just grab it by the hide and rip the hide right off of it immediately. That's weird. Okay. Now that strength, we're going to talk about the Valley of the Headless Men. I don't know if you guys have ever gone down this one, but the Valley of the Headless Men is a area, I believe in Canada or the very, very northern part of North America. It's like right on the border there. Anyhow, the Valley of the Headless Men is supposedly where a lot of gold is, but no one has successfully been able to extract gold from there. There's been like 6 decapitated bodies found, and no one's ever found their heads. Like, that's weird. Like, no animal would do that. A wolf wouldn't do that. A bear wouldn't do that. A mountain lion wouldn't do that. Their heads are just ripped off. And it's almost like a territorial thing. People, kind of believe and speculate there on it. It's like, hey, don't come in my cave, because they're trying to go in these caves and these rivers and mine this gold. And over the past, 50 or 60 years, multiple people have disappeared and never been found. But 6 bodies on 6 different occasions have been found with their heads removed, all within a couple miles of each other. That hasn't happened anywhere else in the world, so that's how I know it's not an animal. And 2, I'm an animal expert. It's what I do for a living. Ain't no animal eating nothing but the head, like the least meaty part of the body, the most bony part of the body. They're not eating the head. They might eat the skin, like the noses and the ears and stuff. They're not going to eat the whole head and not the torso. Most, your wolves, your bears, your mountain lions, they're going right for the torso every time. They're going right for that soft belly where there's no bones in the way, and they're going to hollow you out. That's what they're mostly going to do. Now, many of you that have been watching my page for a while know that my wife is Native American. She belongs to the Chickasaw tribe, even though she's also part Choctaw. And we're going to get to the Choctaw Indians in just a minute with Bigfoot. We've done a video on it before, but we're going to talk about a lot of Native American beliefs with Bigfoot. Depending on the tribe, they have very different beliefs in Bigfoot. Some, he's like the boogeyman, which would be like the Choctaw. And then some, he is a nature spirit that protects the forest. There's many different accounts in the way this goes. A lot of the tribes do not believe that he is a flesh and bone creature. They think that he can be, but they also think that he can plane walk, which is walking between planes of existence and, the different realms of existence, and, like the planes of light versus the physical realm. There's a whole lot of stuff you can look into with that. And that would also describe the reason why maybe people don't find Bigfoot bodies a lot. Is because they can phase in and out of what we would think is existence. I think that's also what, might be why, everybody always says and jokes, why is every picture of Bigfoot blurry? He might just be blurry. That might be his physical trait of appearance. It's just being kind of blurry, especially if he's phasing in and out. Or people might be only getting a photo once he's already knows that they're there and he's phasing out and they're getting a picture of him being blurry. We're going to talk about a different theory in a minute that's not phasing out of existence, but phasing out of what we can see. We'll get there in a second. But what I want to talk about right now is the Native American beliefs that have gone along with it. So a lot of people in Native American beliefs have described Bigfoots as what we would call giants almost. So the Choctaw actually had what was called the Bigfoot War in 1855. This is a documented event within the Choctaw tribe. You can read about it online if you want to. There's a lot of, there's books been written about it. There's things you can see. And this is what bothers me, is mainstream science and archaeologists go, well, they didn't mean that. And that always bothers me, because we'll take a civilization's history. We'll look at what they wrote down as their history, and we pick and choose on what we want to believe is real. So they'll say, oh, they had a war with these Native American tribes over here. Why is that real, but their war with Bigfoot's not? Maybe they made that up about that tribe over there. Maybe they made that story up to scare other tribes, right? And they go, no, we got proof and we got documentation of it. Okay, they supposedly had proof of the Bigfoot War. They supposedly had documentation of the Bigfoot War. And what happened was, okay, so they were on the Trail of Tears. They were getting, moved from the east to what is now Oklahoma. I believe the Bigfoot War happened in southeastern Oklahoma. But anyhow, what they described as happening is these Bigfoot creatures were taking their children in the middle of the night. They would just get kidnapped and eaten, essentially. And they were living in this cave area. And it was getting to the point where, as they were on the Trail of Tears and they were keeping moving, these Bigfoots would find new caves and they would just kind of camp out near where this tribe was. And they just kept taking them just one by one. And eventually the tribe got its best warriors, and they hunted these creatures down, like not just one, but multiple of these creatures down, and they cornered them in a cave and lit the inside of the cave on fire. Like they put some kind of accelerant in there, like a bunch of grasses and stuff, and they kind of like burned the whole entrance of this, where the cave would have been full of smoke and would suffocate anything that was in there. And supposedly a few of the creatures escaped. So we read this story, and archaeologists go, that was just like some parable. That was just some like way to scare the kids to not leave the camp and to stay next to the tribe and not leave and go on your own. That's just a way to scare the kids. Why? They didn't say that. They documented their whole Trail of Tears. They documented when it happened, how bad the people were to them. They documented when sickness and illness would happen. They documented a Bigfoot war. They documented where they landed at. And for whatever reason, out of that whole Trail of Tears, we just take that story and go, and just throw it away. And don't honor anything that they said about it. That does not sit okay with me. And we see this all throughout history. We see civilizations talk about Atlantis, and they'll go, yeah, we traded with Portugal. We traded with Italy. We traded with Atlantis. And historians will go, oh, you traded with Atlantis? And they just pick that part out of the story and then throw it away because it doesn't fit a narrative that they're on, or they can't explain it. And no, la-di-da, holier-than-thou scientist wants to say, well, we can't explain that. They will always want to have the answers, because if they don't have the answers, they don't have a job, right? They want to be the most credible scientists out there. They want to be the most successful scientists out there. Well, to be the most successful scientist, you have to have the most answers. You have to have the most explanations. You have to have the most debunked theories. So when there's a lot of question marks, they throw them out. Okay, you got to understand that when you're looking at history, you are also looking at it someone's job to answer these questions. So I think all of us have worked a job, and we get asked by a customer, and we don't want to say, I don't know, because then the customer's going to say, well, go find out. So what you do is you just make something up. I think we've all done that at any job ever. I think our kids have always asked us questions that we didn't know the answer to. Like, why is the sky blue? And you're like, oh, it reflects off the ocean, which is not true. And we just make something up. I think that has happened time and time and time and time again throughout history, to at some point it became an accepted truth. Because what happens when your grandpappy tells you something? You take it as a fact, and then you tell your grandchildren something, and they take it as a fact. And then before long, it's just facts. When grandpappy was hiring a kite and was never telling any facts in the first place. Like, I know that's a joke and that's supposed to be funny, but how many times do we do this? For example, a lot of people make shortbread cake in the oven. When they make it, they cut it in half and they put it in the oven. They put one in each pan. Why do you do that? The answer is because a long time ago, ovens were too small to fit the whole cake in one pan. So they would divide the cake in half and put one on the top rack and one on the bottom rack. Still to this day, our ovens are damn sure wide enough to cook those cakes in one rack, but people still cut the cake in half because somebody did that a long time ago. I think science and history works that same way, is that we got an answer so long ago that we're afraid to ever change that answer. I'm going to talk about two more things about why we might not find Bigfoot very often. So one of the reasons why we might not find them is many great apes, like gorillas. Like, do you know how recently gorillas were discovered? Gorillas were discovered scientifically barely over 100 years ago. Barely over 100 years ago, a gorilla that you can go to any zoo and see, we did not scientifically know existed. Barely 100 years ago. My great-grandmother is still alive. She's 103 years old, and her parents were the first generation to know that gorillas for sure existed. My great-great-grandparents were the first generation to know that as a fact. That is so strange when you think about it. There's a reason why King Kong was such a popular movie when it came out, like in the 19-teens or whatever. Because gorillas just got discovered officially like 20 years before that. And a lot of people hadn't even seen a photograph of what a gorilla looked like. So when they went and watched King Kong, they were like, my God, this guy's huge. Are gorillas really that big? Because people hadn't seen gorillas yet. Like, even though they knew they existed now, no one really seen them yet. Because photographs and videos weren't like the same as what they are now. Like, now if a new animal gets discovered, everybody in the world can see it in 30 seconds. Back then it took a while. So still, by the 1930s and 40s, a lot of people still had never seen a gorilla. That's weird. That is very strange. Kangaroos weren't officially discovered until the 1700s. Kangaroos. People have been walking on this planet for tens of thousands of years. Science didn't officially accept that kangaroos were around until the 1700s. Now, the people that lived in Australia, like the Aborigines, they were like, yeah, they've been here. Same thing, when they found gorillas and stuff, people that were living in those areas were like, yeah, we've known about them the whole time. People that live in the foothills of Appalachia, like that family I was telling you a minute ago, might be the equivalent to those Aborigines or those people that were living around the gorillas, saying like, yeah, we've been telling people for a long time, and they just call us crazy. Just like the first depiction of kangaroos described them as monsters. There was an explorer in the 1700s that said they were human-sized monsters that ate things with their belly because they saw them at a distance with binoculars, saw their babies jumping into their pouch, and thought they were eating things with their belly because marsupials exist almost nowhere else in the world. North America has one marsupial, and it's a possum. Europe, I think they have possums. I'm not even sure. They might not have any marsupials at all. So marsupials are an incredibly rare species of creature, and they were described as eating things with their belly. That's how dumb we were just a few hundred years ago. That's why I always get so frustrated when people say that, like, oh, it couldn't exist, or oh, if it did exist, it was a orang pendek and it existed tens of thousands of years ago. Okay, we just found a fish off the coast of Africa like 50 years ago that science had swore up and down had been extinct for 20,000 years. Giant squids were not officially discovered until after the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Let that sink in. We made a monster movie that was put out as fiction that turned out to be non-fiction. We made the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea before anybody had seen a living giant squid. Yet we still think that there's big giant creatures we would have had to discover them all by now. No, the hell we wouldn't. So the last thing is the Glimmerman theory. So if you don't know what Glimmerman theory is, think about like the Invisible Man. Think about the movie Predator. You know the movie Predator, he can cloak himself and turn invisible. There are so many reports of the Glimmerman theory, it is wild. There's one famous one about a female that was deer hunting and could have sworn that she saw a Glimmerman. So Glimmerman is essentially this phenomenon where people say that they can see the silhouette of a humanoid person, creature, but it's like the light is distorted, where you can tell something's there, but you can't see what it is. Like a cloaked camouflage, just like the Predator movie that I described. And you'll see the branches moving around it, and it's just like it's taking up physical space. Some people report being stalked by these things or followed. Some people report seeing them by their house all the time. There's a lot of theories that maybe this is a military cloaking device that we're testing out. There's a lot of theories that people are just crazy. And then there's a lot of theories that this is what we talked about earlier when we talked about Bigfoot walking between planes of existence and planes of light. We already know that there's light waves that we cannot see. Most animals can see many more lights than we can. In fact, foxes can actually see magnetic waves. If y'all didn't know that, foxes actually hunt using magnetic waves and frequencies that we can't even see. Now, they can't just sense them. They can physically see like a line in the air of a magnetic wave. That's pretty wild. That's what I don't know if you know this or not, but foxes always know where magnetic north is because they can physically see it. That is so strange. It's also true. It's pretty wild. Foxes' eyesight improve when they face magnetic north. So they almost always attack creatures from magnetic south, facing north. You're going to learn a lot of strange facts today. So we know that there's a lot of things with light waves and planes that we can't fully comprehend and understand. So why would it be out of the realm of thinking that there's creatures out there that might be able to tap into those things and camouflage themselves with those light waves? This is going to get into a weird theory about the red light lenses of Vietnam. So if you didn't know, before night vision goggles were green, they were actually red. And they stopped using them very quickly because people that were using the red light night vision goggles were reporting seeing demons. They were reporting seeing monsters. They reported that these things acted like they couldn't see them, but once they realized they were being looked at by these people wearing these goggles, they would come after the people with the goggles. There's tons of documented reports of guys wearing night vision goggles and opening fire and shooting at these things. And they're not hitting them because they're not on the same plane of existence we are, but for whatever reason, these red wave frequencies goggles could see them. And that is I swear to God, that is the legitimate reason, if you look it up, why they use green night vision goggles now. They say they're more efficient and everything, but look up the reports of people seeing literal spirits, demons, ghosts, whatever you want to call them. You know, and maybe that at the end of the day, that's what a ghost is. It's just a flicker of this light wave dimension. But anyhow, getting back on topic here, the whole Glimmer Man thing is a really wild theory that you can go down. And that might have been what the Vietnam people with the red light lenses were seeing, was these things that people would describe as the Glimmer Man, but these goggles were letting them, you know, see them. The last thing I'm going to discuss today on this Bigfoot theory is the possibility that they are pets, like literally like Chewbacca from Star Wars. This is going to sound goofy at first, but just hear me out. Pop culture tells us a lot of truth right in our face without coming out and saying it's the truth. So we all have seen Han Solo with Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon. This is a weird little, you know, synchronicity here. Any time that there is a spike in Bigfoot sightings, there is also a spike in UFO sightings in the same area. And a lot of Bigfoot researchers are now jokingly saying it, but starting to also kind of believe it. If UFOs are real and they have pets, just like how when you stop at a truck stop and you let your dog out to pee, there is a theory out there that when you see a Bigfoot in the woods, it's because a UFO was literally letting it out to stretch its legs or to use the bathroom or to gather resources, whatever their plan is to use them. Maybe they're the scouts for, you know, whatever they're doing. Who knows? But there is a hand-in-hand every single time without fail. If there's a spike in Bigfoot sightings, there's also a spike in UFO sightings. If there's a spike in UFO sightings, there's a spike in Bigfoot sightings. Every single time in the same areas. It is really eerie when you look at those connections and speculate, you know, are those the UFOs themselves? Are they letting themselves out? Are they taking a walk? Are they going on a hike? Are they sightseeing? You know, or is it their pets? Maybe they're for protection. A lot of people think that UFOs, if they came here, would be a lot physically weaker than us, because gravity on most planets that we can see, based upon where it is in conjunction with its star, would have less gravity, which would mean they wouldn't build muscle mass like we would, so they might be a lot physically weaker than us, so they've got some other species that would do their physical bidding. So yeah, that's another little fact for you. Supposedly, if there was an alien invasion, they would have to use weapons because they could not throw hands like we could. So that's kind of like, if you ever watched Superman or read the comics of Superman, that's technically why Superman is so strong on Earth. If Superman goes back to his home planet, he's actually just like a normal person. He's so strong on Earth because the gravitational pressure on his planet is so incredibly enormous that compared to our planet, it's like he can move like that because his body was made to withstand all that gravitational force. Also, he gets like power from the sun or something, you know, whatever. But Dragon Ball Z. Okay, here you go. If you ever watch Dragon Ball Z, that's why Saiyans are so much stronger on Earth than they would be anywhere else, because the gravitational force on Earth is less, so they're stronger. I love comic books and anime, so one of these videos would be incomplete if I don't go on my anime tangents. So, are Bigfoot's pets? Who knows? Are Bigfoot's blurry people? Are they great apes? Are they another humanoid species that science doesn't want to admit exist alongside of us current day? Is there something more to this? Are they nature spirits? We don't know, and I do not think we'll ever know, because I think that it has been confirmed by the powers that be that it is a sealed, locked-up case forever. Or maybe there's nothing to it at all. Maybe they're just feral people that are a little crazy. I appreciate you guys watching this. If you're not already watching this on the podcast, it's called Matt from Nomads on Apple and Spotify. It's called Nomads Animal Reserve on YouTube. For those of you watching the podcast, go follow on our Facebook. It's Nomads Animal Encounter on Facebook and TikTok. We'd love to see you there.